So I encourage people to, like I said, journal things first. And then if you have a story, get it out. Go on podcasts, go on radio shows that you can, hit the news stories, wherever you can get your story heard so that maybe you can change just one or two or 100 or thousands of people. You never know who you're going to hit and what's going to make it. And if you keep striving towards making yourself a better person and you keep striving to get your story out, eventually it it may do you such good that you encourage other people in such the manner that they don't want to commit suicide anymore.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Mindy Dougherty. How are you doing today, Mindy?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really can't complain. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Thanks. It's been sunny, and then all of a sudden it became like so windy. I was looking for Toto. Like, Toto, you coming?
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's been pretty nice here. I'm up in Wisconsin. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Oregon, Central
Okay.
Oregon.
Well, I love kicking out the show and talk about the importance of networking. How are we connected?
So I have a friend named Nicole, and we were on a couple independent films together. And I've been wanting to do more podcasts about my books for my autobiography and my first children's book that I released. This one's called A Resilient Warrior, and it's available on Amazon.com. And also my first children's book, which is A Dragon's Voice, and it's also available on Amazon. And then she had told me to get on some podcasts to express things about like military topics and other things that I just wanted to kind of not unload, but like get people more educated about.
I appreciate that, Mindy. It's one of those things. That's why I do love those Facebook groups, and that's how we got connected originally. I think
Right.
there's so much expertise in there, and it's free. That's the amazing part. It's not
Yeah, I like free.
it's not joining those courses, and those have their place, but I think you can get so much info and opportunity from groups like that.
Right. And it's great networking as well. Like somebody might know somebody that wants you in their part or some it's part of their podcast or part of their film or sometimes it's hearsay or sometimes people like your look or like your voice or whatever they have and they want you included in on it, which is great.
It really is. I think anyone who's done podcasting or has been a guest starts to understand how much work it actually is. So I think
Right.
finding ways
How much you really don't get paid.
exactly finding ways to support people is just so important.
Yeah.
So I want to know a little bit more about you. That comic book issue number one, that origin story. Who are you?
So I am a United States Army veteran. My previous, and when I was 18, it's called a combat field medic. I served in the Army from 95 to 99. I was sent to Bosnia, Croatia, and Hungary. Unfortunately, I was in Germany first, but then we got sent to Bosnia. So I ended up getting a parasite shortly after arriving. And I had appendicitis and pancreatitis at the same time, which was undiagnosed and very painful for those who don't know what pancreatitis is. And so I basically had to leave Bosnia, go back to Germany, get my appendix taken out. But unfortunately, I had pancreatitis for 8 years, even after I got my appendix and gallbladder taken out. My last couple surgeries were basically having the rest of my pancreas and duodenum taken out. So I've have 4 organs that are missing since 2004. And so I am also a medical researcher. I was a trauma nurse, interventional radiology nurse, and now a long term care nursing. And then I also do something called Watsu practitionership. And I basically do shiatsu massage in warm water. So that's been really healing for both myself and others. And I was bedbound for about 3 years and 8 months because I had a bilateral ankle fracture And unfortunately, the VA hospital in San Antonio, Texas hospital, they didn't really take care of me either. And there was a lot of medical abuse. And so that's what I write about in A Resilient Warrior. And since I've actually had it come out, there's been more people that have come and have felt safe enough to get their stories out. And I encourage people to write and journal and garden and do whatever you can to help with PTSD, depression, anxiety. And some of our soldiers are starting over. So it's like, what do you do when you only know one thing and you get out of the military? How do you segue into real life when this is all you're used to doing for so long, and recreating a new life for you and trying to figure out, like, what are my hobbies? What am I here for, And unfortunately, we have such a high suicide rate still that I always tell people to please reach out if you're feeling symptomatic or you're feeling like, you know, things are too overwhelming for you, because there's always someone that's there that can listen for you. And if nobody has anybody, I encourage them message me and I'll listen.
Mindy, I appreciate. First of all, I want to thank you for your service, but I also find it fascinating because once there's not always a blueprint once you leave the military. I can assume with as you mentioned, a lot of veterans that struggle once they leave if they're not going to be a career military personnel. It's kind of like thank you for your service, good luck. We'll see you later.
Yeah, I don't even know if you get a good luck. It's more or less you get out and you're unknown, and that can be very, very hard for a soldier that's been in the military for either 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, and then they're retiring and they have no idea, like, well, what am I supposed to do? My whole life, somebody's told me what to do, how to do, when to show up at work, when to eat, when not to eat, when to go to bed. And so you live under these regimens for so long. And what's really hard is for the people that have gone to war, when they come back, it's almost like you want that adrenaline rush. So you'll hear like them going into like racing or making bad choices or wanting to do bungee jumping or something to get that exhilaration or that adrenaline running again. And it's almost like they're lacking or missing that feeling of being under fire, basically. And
Yeah,
so it's a really hard transition for them.
I can only imagine, especially as you mentioned, if you're coming right out of high school, you enlist right away. It's never been that other kind of experience.
Sure, and that was me. I signed up a year before I graduated, and then I had to have permission from my family members. So my mom signed the paperwork, bawling her eyes out. No, don't go. I'm like, I'm going. Bye. But for me personally, I wanted to be in the medical field, so I thought that would be the best training. Should we go to war? I wanted to go because I would thought, oh, this is the greatest training I can get if I wanted to be a PA or a doctor or in the medical field. And so when they told me I was a field medic, I learned how to do things from the hospital inside a field atmosphere to keep things clean, learned how to create water sanitation and teach people about bacteria and growth and stuff like that. So when I got out of the military, I kind of just was following that medical lead and trying to go to school and stuff like that and use the GI Bill and then eventually voc rehab. So it's been great. However, now that I'm in this phase of my life, it's again almost restarting because it's been since 1995 that I started the medical field. And after a while, you wonder, like, should I veer off into something else or do I want to do something else with my life? Like when I grow up, I want to do this. It's like, well, now I'm all grown up and now I got to figure out. I'll 48 years old, at the end of the year, I'll be 49. So it's like, all right, well, do I want to do something different in my 50s? I have no idea yet.
I think I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's so important. I always tell people to keep your options open and realize that it's okay to. Of course, it's scary, and there's sometimes a lot more responsibilities the older you get. But being willing or interested in restarting or pivoting or changing careers, I think is never a bad thing because, like you mentioned, I mean, we live a long time. It's one of those things where I think
Right.
we have this vision of who we are, what we want to be, and then we accomplish it, and then it's kind of like, all right, well, what's next for me?
Right, and if you're an athlete and you're competitive, same kind of mention that, okay, and I have a lot of friends that are, that fight professionally, MMA, UFC, and stuff like that, and when they're retired, they don't know what to do either. So they become depressed, or anxiety sits in, and then they almost recreate a fight just to have that training atmosphere. Or unfortunately, there are some that go back to a source that would be almost like they don't know what to do, so they reach for drugs, or they become alcoholics, or they go to jail, or something that, instead of doing something for the positive, they end up getting, unfortunately, led to, like, down the wrong road. And so for me, I always like to mention to people that either know me or don't know me, I encourage them to read my story, because people are like, well, what did you write your book about? Well, I have overcome sexual abuse as a child. I overcame getting sexually assaulted and getting raped at 10 from my brother's friends. And unfortunately, my first assailant was my brother. And so when you're in abusive relationships as a young child, you end up kind of carrying that over in your adulthood as well. So I wrote my story raw and honest. And then I was unfortunately tortured at the San Antonio, Texas VA for 4 straight months, and I wasn't able to walk. I've been doing rehab now for 10 years, and I only was able to walk with stem cell utilization from BioAccelerator. In Colombia, I got 2 BioAccelerator stem cells. And so, being tortured for 4 straight months, it led me down a road where I just hated the world. I left my religion. I left everything that I thought that I knew. I had sunk into a really bad depression, and then I was watching this show called The Vikings on the History Channel, and a guy reached out to me that was an extra on the Vikings and Vikings Valhalla, and Game of Thrones, and How to Train Your Dragon. And so he reached out to me in the very beginning of what I was going through, and introduced me to some other extras that were in the show. And that show kind of got me through my stuff. And so I dedicated my book to the Vikings, Michael Hurst, who wrote it and created the show, and then anybody who was involved in those shows, because at one point, one of the characters brought my book on set. So I've just been really, really excited to be able to kind of be an influence to those who've wanted to write and didn't know how, like, where to start, and encourage them to start writing. And I've had people in different countries, in Ireland, in the UK, in Australia, and in Russia, most recently in the last couple of years, have written a book and then mentioned, hey, I wrote a book after you said, to go ahead and write it out, And so I encourage people to, like I said, journal things first. And then if you have a story, get it out. Go on podcasts, go on radio shows that you can, hit the news stories, wherever you can get your story heard, so that maybe you can change just one or two or 100 or thousands of people. You never know who you're going to hit, and what's going to make it. And if you keep striving towards making yourself a better person, and you keep striving to get your story out, eventually it it may do you such good that you encourage other people in such the manner that they don't want to commit suicide anymore.
Mindy, I appreciate that. I think it's so important. And I tell my clients, I tell guests, I tell everyone how important it is to share their story. Because although it might not look exactly like someone else's story, it's from your lens and through your perspective. And you just never know who might hear it or who might help or how they might take pieces of that story. And as you mentioned, give them the courage to share their own story.
Right. And I was telling somebody the other day, there's just so many therapies that are unknown to people, like equine therapy, or meditation, or yoga, or doing gardening. For me personally, I don't really like talk therapy, because I think it re-traumatizes a lot of people and they don't realize it. So they're going to therapy thinking they're doing a great thing. not knowing why they're always triggered or why they're offset or why they're getting more depressed. And literature and research is showing that actually talk therapy is not really that great for us. You know, a lot of people did that as a segue, but when you're 5 years, 10 years and not getting anywhere, you might want to look into something different, you know, like biofeedback or something called neurofeedback. And that's where they put little things on your head that's electric, and they basically hook it up to the computer. The computer reads your brain, analyzes it, or analyzes it, excuse me, and then plays certain music that helps change the brain waves. And once your brain is changed, it's not going to go back. So it's not like you get fixed and then you automatically go back. Yeah, you can go back to being depressed or anxious, but you're not as bad as you used to be.
I think it's so important because there are more therapies out there than, obviously, as you mentioned, most people realize. And I think I am happy that I think more and more of the stigma of going to therapy has started to fade away. Of course, it's not 100% or not perfect yet, but I do encourage people who feel like they might need to talk to someone or listen or figure out a different way. I think it's just important to get out there and reach out for help, and be a willing be someone who's willing to listen to others as well.
Right. And unfortunately, there was a lot of bad stigma. If you went to, you know, if you go to therapy, you're crazy, or if you go to therapy, you're going to get drugged up, or, you know, there's only one way to do it. And, you know, different cultures frown upon getting therapy, which, you know, it's understandable. However, I would hope at some point in some year that we get to a point where not only are the stigmas taken away, but it's encouraged to go to therapy, some type of therapy. Like I said, not a specific type of therapy, or maybe alternative even therapies. Like if you like to go into the spiritual realm, or, you know, like I said, I garden, I take walks. Exercise for me is my go to because that's what I've been doing since I was very young. For some people, they hate exercise. Okay, well, maybe get on a bike, or, you know, do a cooking class, or, you know, do a therapy that's not in your normal range of therapy, not just talking to somebody or doing a humana, humana, humana. You know, it's that doesn't have to be the humana, 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 let's go. You know, something that will relieve the stress, relieve the pressure, relieve the anxiety and the depression, and then maybe find a group that you kind of fit into. And sometimes that can be hard as well, especially when you're just beginning, when people are like, well, I don't know what I like. Well, do something until you find it, you know. And if you're not in the right group, or you don't feel like you fit in, exit the group and go find another group. You know, if you're not friends with anybody, the way to start is to start meeting people in your local community. Go to the library, you know, and just start inching your way to talking to people, or go to different community centers. And you know, if you want to help out the elderly, go to the elderly. They're always looking for somebody to kind of speak to because they're lonely in their nursing homes and they have nobody to speak to. They're more than willing to listen to you because what are they gonna do? They ain't got nothing to do. You know, they ain't got nowhere to go. They got no schedule.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's so important to get out there and try new things, and you know find that community, because there are people out there that are similar in your interests or in how you do things, that I think a lot of times more people than we realize are lonely or would like to just be around others that have that same interest.
Yeah, even I mean, there's hiking groups even, or, you know, like our group, podcasting groups, or, you know, drama groups, or IMDb groups, you know. So there's all these different groups for whatever you enjoy doing, you know. And like I said, if you don't know what you enjoy, step into something different, and then maybe you'll realize, oh, you know, I really like this. Acting for me, I didn't know that I was going to even do that until a friend of mine came along and said, hey, you're really angry. You know what helped me with my anger is improv. And I'm like, well, what's improv? Like, what's that? And, oh, come meet my teacher. Come with me one day. And then I met somebody else who was like, oh, I do independent film. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, how does that work? And they're like, oh, you should come with me, meet this person. So you end up networking with a bunch of people, and they're like, oh man, I really loved working with you. I want to work with you again. So it's kind of just reaching your niche, so they say, or trying to figure out what's good. what's good for me might not be good for you. Like there's equine therapy if you like horses, or there's pet therapy with different dogs or cats or birds, or, reptiles, whatever you're into. And, if you like the Survivor series or anything like that, and you want to learn how to be on your own or live off grid, there's even groups for that. So anything that you like, it's bound to be there. Or, if you like YouTube it up, like if you want to learn how to sew, go on YouTube. It seems like it's like the new Google. You just YouTube it.
I couldn't agree more. So, Mindy, in everyone's life, you can make a decision. You can go east, you can go west. Can you give me a time you made a decision, just went for it?
After I was tortured for 4 months, I was bedbound and I had to have my left leg raised above my eyes for over 3 years. Otherwise, it would swell like an elephant's foot. And then I started to learn about water therapy, which is what I am, a Watsu practitioner. So I reached out to do that kind of therapy and then became a Watsu practitioner. And then when I really learned how to like go within and really try to help myself, that's when I started writing. And I wanted to make a difference. And so when my grandmother had asked me, you should write some stories, you should write a book. She'd asked me to do this when I was like 20. And I was like, yeah, I should write. I should write a book and do that. Then I found out that she was dying. And so it encouraged me to hurry up and get the book done. It took 4 years to get it done. I had four different editors at the time because my comprehension and reading skills weren't that well. So that's also why I wrote this children's book, A Dragon's Voice, and it looks like this. And what it's about is there's universal lessons for children under the age of 12, and it teaches them do not lie, don't steal, and what I do affects the people that are around me. So maybe and creating friendships along the way, and also to listen to your intuition, because there's so many times where kids are told what to do, but they're not told how to do it, or they're not told what's an intuition mean, or why is my gut not feeling good, like why is this off, and then doing certain scenarios with them so that they could learn what this really means. Like for strangers, when a stranger asks you, hey, do you want to come with me to ride my bike, hey, I want to take pictures with your clothes off, hey, you want some candy? Hey, your mom told me to come pick you up. You start doing those scenarios with your children, and they get to yell and scream and say no and have a voice for themselves. That's not in my book, but that's what I teach people when they ask me why I wrote my book. And in the book, there's a scenario where, the dragon annihilates all the flies, and the frog's like, hey, you ate all my dinner. Like, now our family has nothing to eat. And so they create a solution on how to come together, be friends, and how the frog can sustain his life and how the dragon can stop being annoyed, you know? And then there's another part where one person is trying to take a jewel and it's not his, and he felt wrong about it, but he didn't know why he felt wrong about it. And at the end, it's more or less like teaching kids the lessons of don't steal. If it's not yours, don't take it, or don't harm anybody if it's not necessary. And the biggest thing is because I couldn't read when I was younger and I still struggle with the comprehension and the memory issues, what we did is we put the words on one page and then you flip it over and you get the picture. Because sometimes when the picture is on the right hand side or the left hand side and the words are right there, kids will just pay attention to the picture and not get their own picture of when they're reading. If you allow a child to use their own imagination first, then when they flip over to the next page and they see, oh, that's what it really looks like, it helps their memory banks to be able to learn how to test better. It teaches them to have a different type of memory when they're using their own brain, their own imagination, and drawing up the pictures that they need, so that when it's exam time or when it's test time, they have a better understanding of what they've read. And so for me, it was imperative to have lessons almost on every page, because when I was reading, or even when I'm still reading, it's hard for me to remember what page before that leads to the next page and the next page. And by the time I'm at the end of the book, I'm like, wait, what did I just read? Or what characters were in there? Or who is who? So this allows the child to utilize their own imagination so that they can build upon that.
Mindy, I love that. Title of the podcast, Into the Unknown. What are you working on right now? Where can people learn more about you, your story, and all that good stuff?
So I was asked if I would write another children's book, and I'm considering it. This one just came out, so I want to see how this does first. I'm about to start an 8-week course for military veterans, and it's for women's military to learn different topics, so that because I was asked to become part of a board, so that I could bring or we could bring women on different retreats and help them get past what they've gone through in the military, or if they were assaulted, or if they went to war and they're having struggles, just to help them break through those barriers and to have a voice as well. And then working on getting more podcasts and getting my books out as much as I can. And then talking to people that are doing films and stuff like that to see if I could be a part of their groups or if they want me to do some stuff. Like I said, I did independent horror films, comedy, um, and different genres. So I'm not really stuck in one genre. So I like to kind of peep out and find out like what I could do in different areas just to grow even more. And so for me, I'm also looking at public speaking adventures or time allotted stuff that I could actually do to get my voice heard and to get my books out there and really meet the community where they're at instead of just meeting the community where I live. And I'm also found I have a Facebook under Mindy Dougherty, MindyDougherty, and you'll see my face. It's the same picture all the way through. I have Instagram, I have TikTok, and then I have LinkedIn for professionals. And so, and then like I said, just advertising a dragon's voice on Amazon.com, and then a resilient warrior, which is available also on Amazon.com, and hope people either read them or share them as well.
Well, Mindy, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciated you sharing your story.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for the opportunity.
That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.